Well, it happened. Price of Bitcoin has dropped through the floor, and I'm going to tell you how you can profit from it. Welcome to the weekly crypto update. First, let's go to the charts. As you can see, we have our wedge here that I drew weeks ago, and we finally dropped through. So this wedge is no longer valid. We can just get rid of that. Now, this is what I've been expecting. We finally, at $8,036 per Bitcoin, have filled the CME gap. That's that gap I've been talking about, where the CME closes on the weekend, closes at night, and Bitcoin market never closes, and it jumped up, price jumped up, and created a gap in the CME in the CME futures charts. We've gone now, and we've gone down, and we have filled that gap. I expected this to happen. I couldn't say this is what's going to happen. You know, no one in this industry ever says, here's exactly what's going to happen. I can guarantee it. Nobody ever does that. But I was 98% positive that we were going to drop down in price to fill that gap. And the reason for that is because that idea of filling the gap is decades old. People have been talking about filling the gap in stocks and in the price of stocks forever. And once we dropped from this high of 13,000, over 13,000, and we started to go sideways, it looked more and more like we were going to drop in price to fill that gap before we went up. What does this mean to you? Well, if you bought up here at 13,000 or 10,000 or even 9,000, you may be panicking. I've lost money. No, you have not. You don't. Whether it's stocks, bonds, or crypto, you don't actually lose money until you sell. You don't realize any gains or losses until you sell the asset. So, and the reason for this is because the asset, whatever price you bought it at, if the price drops, it always has that potential to come back up to where it was or above. So you can regain your money. You can surpass what you bought in at. Don't worry. Do not panic. Now, the other thing is, we have noticed, I say we, it has been noticed that generally in the last couple of cycles where, the bull markets, where Bitcoin has risen in price, it has not ever, to this point, at least so far, it has never gone up to or above its previous high until after Bitcoin goes through a halving. Okay, what's the halving? The halving happens every 230,000 blocks, something like that. And because a block is created about every 10 minutes, it can be calculated as to when that halving is going to happen. It happens about every 4 years, and the next one is going to happen May 24th, I believe, of 2020. So another 6 months or so. Actually, 7 months. Seven months now. And so we've still got 7 months before the halving. And my concern, when we were back here in June and rising exponentially up to this $13,000 price, my concern was we were going up way too fast. We were going to peak early, if you will. And that was concerning because it broke the pattern that we've seen over in this 4-year cycle. Bitcoin goes through a 4-year cycle. It has 3 years of bull market and roughly one of a bear market. Okay? They don't always fall directly on the beginning and ending of a year. So the bear market in 2014 went over those 2 years, but it was still only about 50, 60 weeks long, which is a year. So I'm looking at this price rising excessively, exponentially. And I'm concerned that it's going up way too fast. Well, then we started to move sideways. And you can see we've got a lot of volatility here. I mean, it's going up and it's going down, but it was going roughly sideways. Fantastic. We're cooling off. We're taking some time. We're resting up. And again, that CME gap that we saw way back, I want to say it was, where was it? It would have been right back over here. Okay, this area right here, it's filled here because this is the Bitcoin market. It's not the CME. But back in here, there was a gap on the CME where it jumped from here to here, and we needed to fill that. Well, now we filled that in the last 4 or 5 days. We have dropped quite a bit. In fact, let's see here. I think so. If we look at where we've dropped from, we start here and where am I? Oh, I got to hit the draw button. So if we start here and we draw, there we go. We have about a 24 or 25% drop just over the past 5 days. Now, if we bring this back in, we pull down a little bit, we go back over to the tool, and we draw from the top down to where we are. Now we're looking at 45% drop from the height of 13,890, almost $14,000, down to the low price of 77.58. So we've dropped nearly 45%, almost 50% from the peak. So my question to you, you're going, especially if you bought up near the top of this, if you bought $10, $12, $11, $12,000 per Bitcoin, and you're now looking at a Bitcoin that's at $8,022 per Bitcoin, you're going, okay, now what? Well, let me ask you this. You go into a car dealership. Last week you went in and you looked at, I don't know, a brand new Cadillac. And the dealer says, well, it's a $50,000, $55,000 car. Well, we use 50. It's a nice round number. It's a $50,000 car. Well, now you go back this week and he tells you, well, it's a $50,000 car, but we've put it on sale. It's now half price. When are you going to buy that? Are you going to buy that when it was 50, or are you going to buy it at half price, 25? It's still a $50,000 car. Well, Bitcoin is still a $13,000, $14,000 asset. Actually, it's still a $20,000 asset because that's where it's been. But in the short term, it's been as high as 13. Now it's only $8,000. Where are you going to buy? Are you going to wait for it to go back up in price, or are you going to buy in now? As always, none of this is financial advice. I'm simply pointing out that because of this drop, you benefit if you purchase now, or if you, and I'm not saying, and I'm never saying, put all your money in now. What I'm saying is that if you are averaging in, if you're putting a little money in every week, every couple of weeks, every month, and you're seeing the prices drop the way they have been, and you're concerned because every time you buy in, it's for less and less and less money, the same amount of money buys you more Bitcoin. That's a great thing, especially if you, like myself, expect that Bitcoin will go up in value way higher than it currently is. If you think that, and I'm based on some basic calculations I've done, I'm looking at $250,000 Bitcoin in this bull run. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm saying that based on some basic calculations I've done, I think that's probable. Okay? And everyone else is talking at least $100,000. So we're looking at an $8,000 Bitcoin. And everybody in this space is expecting Bitcoin to go up to at least $100,000 before the end of the bull run. Doesn't it make sense that buying low, buying at this price is a good thing? You can afford more. You can afford more Bitcoin at $8,000 than you could at 13 or 50, 20, 30, or $50,000. Why not buy now? The problem is the average person, the average retail investor, they don't look at things that way. They never have. This is why most people lose money in the market. They'll look at a stock, and first off, they won't hear about it until it's made its massive run. It's not until a stock has gone parabolic that you, or not even a stock, an asset, whether it's Bitcoin or a stock or anything else. Most people are not going to hear about it until it's already gone parabolic. That's when it hits the news. Well, that's at the end of its rise. That's when it's at its top or very near. And so, of course, they buy in then, and it seems like immediately it drops in price. It goes into its bear cycle, and it drops, and they lose money. And then they look at it and say, well, the stock or the coin or whatever is worthless because I bought in at this high price, and now it's worth so much less. It's worthless. I lost money. Why would I want to continue buying in? Well, that's the way most people invest, and that's why they lose money. Everybody knows the saying, buy low, sell high. Nobody does it. Well, very few people do it. The average investor will never do that because they don't hear about the asset or whatever it is they're looking to invest in until it's far too late. By the time something hits the cable news, the national news on the networks or wherever, by the time you hear about it there, by the time Kramer is talking about it, hitting buttons on his console about it, it's far too late. It's already made its move. Right now, we're in that very beginning part of the cycle of Bitcoin's rise up to where it's going to go. This is the time when it's smart to invest. Now, why did Bitcoin drop the way it has? There's a lot of theories going around, and a lot of people are saying it's because of Bakkt. Bakkt finally was introduced and did absolutely nothing. I think they said they did 70 Bitcoin worth of trades, 28 trades total the first day. Okay, fine. I don't think it's because Bakkt tanked. I think what it is the case, and again, because I've spent so long in the stock market, I'm familiar with the sayings. In the stock market, there is a saying, buy the rumor, sell the news. Okay? What that means is, if there's a rumor that something's going to happen, buy into it, and then be ready to sell as soon as that news cycle hits and the fact of the matter is revealed. Well, I think that's what we've seen here, is that people were buying into the idea of Bakkt. Bakkt is run by ICE. They're the people who own the New York Stock Exchange. This is mainstream Bitcoin futures. This is the ability for the mainstream investor to invest in the Bitcoin futures and have them settled in Bitcoin, not in dollars like the CME. That could be a huge, and I expect it will be a huge influx of cash at some point. So as Bakkt became closer and closer to being a reality, people bought in and they bought their Bitcoin. And almost the second that Bakkt said, okay, we're open for business, we're doing this, and the price of Bitcoin falls. Well, people sold the news. They bought the rumor that Bakkt was going to come in and make Bitcoin mainstream. And as soon as the news hit that, yes, it's now available, people sold. They sold the news. This has been going on for hundreds of years in other markets. Stocks and commodities and bonds and everything else. This is the way the traders work. They buy the rumor and sell the news. And I think that's exactly what's happened here, is that people bought the rumor, even though Bitcoin was going sideways. I think that they bought the rumor, and once the news hit, they sold on it. And that's what we're seeing. I'm happy to see this because, one, it allows you and I to buy Bitcoin at a much lower price than we could have a week ago. Also, it slows the growth of Bitcoin a little bit so that, because again, I don't expect Bitcoin to really take off until after the halving, which is going to be next May. And let me pull this back a little. Actually, let me do this. So we're looking at the daily here. And honestly, as a swing trader, the daily just gives me, it gives me a nice long sideways view here. But let's look at this at where's my, oh, there it is up here. Let's look at the weekly view. Okay, and we need to scrunch this down a bit. All right, so let's look at the weekly view. And this shows you, this was the peak at $20,000 back in December. Okay, and this is the bottom of the bear run, and so we've been going up. We've gone up a huge amount. I mean, from 3,200 to 13,000 is halfway back up to 20 in just a couple of months. That is a little bit extreme. In fact, that's a lot extreme. So this allows us to, and because we're looking at weekly candles, we're seeing that over the last 3 weeks, Bitcoin has been dropping in price. That's not a bad thing. Again, not a bad thing. We can see the volume here for the last week is bigger than it's been the last several. So a lot of people have been selling. That's fine. But what it does is it allows us to cool down a little bit and not reach that $20,000 peak before we're supposed to. If we look back, and I'm going to try, and it's going to take me a minute here. I don't have it pulled up, but let's look at, let's see here. Let's do this. We're going to have to, and we're going to look at the on the weekly chart here. Okay, so if you look back here, and this is only going back to what, 2015? Yeah, January of 2015. But if you look at this, it's just going sideways. Okay. And that's what it does a lot, it does that all the way through 2015. Okay? It's not until right here in May of 2016 that it really goes up. I mean, there's a slight bump up here starting in October of 2015, but it's really in May of 2016 where Bitcoin starts to really make a move. Well, May of 2016 was after the halving. In fact, this is showing May 23rd of 2016. Okay, well, we're looking at 3 years ago from now, but 4 years ago from where the next halving is, which is May 24th of 2020. So this is where the halving was. And this is what happened. Once it halved, now it starts to make a move. And again, it goes up for 4 weeks, it drops down for a week, and then it goes sideways, and it drops a little more, but it continues to go up. Okay? Yes, there are dips. Dips are normal. Dips are good. You can't have something go up in price so exponentially without it dropping off a little bit. And then it goes up. Now it starts to go into those exponential rises. Okay, let's follow this up. Whoop. Okay, and you'll see that back here. I mean, it's a little hard to tell because these lines start up because they're starting from December of 2014. And these are weekly lines, so they're weekly charts. So we're looking at the the 20, the 50, and the 100 week moving averages. So they start up a little late, but you'll see that really back here where I said, where I talked about the halving back in May, it's riding above that 20-week average, and then it moves up, and then it comes back down to the 20-week average. And then from that point on, I mean, it goes far above that 20-week average and then comes back down to meet it. And then it goes way back up and it comes back down to meet it. Okay. But it is rising here in what were we looking at? August of 2017, where it really started to take off, is well above all of these averages. Okay. And when it does drop, it doesn't drop down to meet the average. It drops and stays above the average. Okay. And it does that continuously all the way up until it peaks. Let's pull this back down so we can see it a little bit better. Until it peaks, okay? And in fact, it doesn't meet the 20-week average until what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. 5 weeks after it peaks, after the peak price. So it takes after it goes so exponential at the peak that it takes 5 more weeks of solid I mean, there's one week. Yeah, there's 1 week there where it went back up. That with the dead cat bounce here. Looked 3 weeks into the bear market, but it takes it 5 weeks for it to come back down to meet this 20-week average. This is not unusual for something that has gone parabolic. But what I'm pointing out here is that nothing really happened in that last bull run. Nothing, because we're looking back here. The moves were so small that they're barely perceptible. But nothing really happened in the market at all until after Bitcoin halved and went from 25 Bitcoins to 12.5 Bitcoins for the miner's fee for mining Bitcoin, and that's going to happen again here next May. It's going to go from 12.5 to 6.25. That's going to be the reward, the mining reward, that anyone who creates a block on Bitcoin will be paid 6.25 Bitcoin for creating that block. And once that halving happens, I expect we will see it go back up above $20,000, and I think we're going to then see some massive moves, and it will start to go much higher than it currently is. But until May, I honestly do not see a whole lot of price action. Use this. This is the accumulation phase of the bull run. I use this. I'm going to say it this way. I use this as an opportunity to buy Bitcoin at a relatively low price. Again, I'm not giving advice. I'm simply telling you what I plan to do. Because when it starts to go up, and it starts to go up exponentially, parabolically, why would I buy in? I'll just let what I have ride and gain value. Now is the time where I am putting money into the market, into Bitcoin, so that I will have as much money as possible, as many Bitcoin as possible, to ride up and hopefully get to that 100, 200, maybe even $250,000 mark. At which point, again, looking at the chart, I when it goes parabolic, it's pretty easy to spot. I'll start pulling money out. I won't pull it all out at once, but I'll start pulling Bitcoin out off to the side so that I can capture those gains, so that if Bitcoin drops precipitously and unexpectedly, I'm not caught flat-footed. My goal is to have most, if not all, of my money out by the time it peaks. If I'm wrong and it continues to go up, because the last time we were in a bear market, people were saying it's going to peak out at 5,000, then it went above that. Well, it's going to peak at 10,000. Everybody was saying $10,000 is where it's going to peak because it's a big even. It's a huge even. Well, it went above that. Well, all right, so maybe it's $15,000. Well, as it turns out, it was just under $20,000. So everybody was wrong about where it was going to stop. I remember the 1st of December of 2017 saying, this is parabolic, this is a bubble, it's going to burst soon. Don't know when, but I know it's going to. Well, when I feel like that again, I'm going to be pulling my money out, putting it over to the side, outside of Bitcoin, whether I put it back in fiat or I put it into a stable coin. I haven't decided yet. I'm looking at going into a stable coin because, it's still in the market. It's easy to move back and forth if it's in a stable coin. And realizing those gains, holding on to those gains while it cools off and goes through its bear market again. But at this point, this little dip here is in the grand scheme of things is insignificant. It really is. It's not worth. The only thing worth noting is that it gives you a chance to buy cheap Bitcoin. So don't let this small drop in price panic you. There are going to be people who don't know what they're doing, who are going to absolutely panic about this. There's nothing I can do about that except try and explain to them that this is not a problem. If you are panicking about this small drop in price, you've put far too much money into Bitcoin. Remember, only put into Bitcoin money that you would be willing to take to Las Vegas. And I say money you would be willing to take to Las Vegas because how many people have you ever heard of who came back with more money from Las Vegas than they left with? I've done it once, and it was a very lucky streak that I was on. I expect to lose money in Vegas. If I go with $1,000 and I'll put $100 a night on the craps tables because I enjoy playing craps, not because I think I'm going to win more money. I fully expect to lose that $100 every night at the craps tables. When I lose it, I'm done. I go out, go somewhere else, go see the sights, whatever. Come back the next night, put another $100 down, expecting to lose it. If you can have that attitude with your investments in Bitcoin, you will go far. You will have plenty of money in the market when it rises, and you will see I believe you will see some magnificent gains by the time this is done. And then once we start to move up and we start to go exponential, I'll start talking about, okay, how we're getting close to the end here. We need to keep an eye on this. We need to start looking at whether or not to pull some money out of Bitcoin or not. But at this point, we're still in the accumulation phase. I'm still putting money into Bitcoin. I'm still averaging in. I'm still happy to see a low price, and for as long as this remains. And I think we'll probably get around $10,000-$15,000 before May of next year. But I don't think we're going to get up above $20,000 until after the halving happens. I expect a dip in the price of Bitcoin when that happens. We'll see how that works. But I also expect, because people who are unfamiliar with Bitcoin, what they're going to hear when the halving happens, what they're going to hear is that half the supply of Bitcoin has disappeared. That's what they're going to hear. That's not what's happening, but that's what people like Kramer and others who don't know the Bitcoin market, don't know how Bitcoin works, are going to be saying, and that's what the average retail investor is going to hear. And that is when they're going to get interested, because all of a sudden, because a scarce commodity means supply and demand. Well, they're going to hear that half of the supply just vaporized, just disappeared. That's not what happened, but that's what they're going to hear out of it. And so they're going to assume, well, if that's the case, then it's a scarce commodity and it's going to rise in price. And they're right, it will rise in price. And yes, they're right, it is a scarce commodity. Not because of half of it disappearing, but because that's the way it was built. But at this point, relax, drink some tea, sit back, watch TV, read a book. There's I have not put out a video in a couple of weeks, mainly because I've been having technical problems with my equipment. But it didn't bother me because nothing was happening. And honestly, nothing is happening. We've dropped in price a couple $1,000. Not a problem. It's nothing to panic over. By the time this is done, what we're seeing on this chart here now is going to look like this by the time we get to the next top of the next bull run. You won't even be able to see it. It will be so small. Don't worry about it. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, for this week. Thank you for watching. If you believe what I have told you, if you've gotten value out of this video, I encourage you to go to cryptocurious.tv/support. These are my wallet addresses if you'd like to help support this channel. I'm not requiring that you do, but if you'd like to give a gift to Crypto Curious to help me continue doing what I'm doing, I plan to be here at least once a week, all the way through this, just to do my best to educate and inform anyone who is interested in how to go about the process of investing in Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. Anyway, I will see you next week.